And today's program brings together critical insights at the intersection of cybersecurity, leadership, corporate governance, ethics, and the rapidly evolving dynamics of artificial intelligence and more. And the leadership landscape is undergoing profound transformation. And modern organizations operate in environments characterized by volatility, technological acceleration, and increasingly complex risk structure we will be discussing today. And under such conditions, leadership is no longer defined solely by compliance or technical proficiency. We know that instead, it requires composure under pressure, clarity of purpose, and the capacity to cultivate trust across the levels of organization. So, after this introduction, in this regard, we are honored to host Doug, the author of The Unicorn Leader, Rising Through the Ranks and Achieving Level 5 Leadership. His unique professional trajectory from frontline policing to senior cybersecurity leadership offers a rare and academically so valuable lens for examining decision making, crisis management, and specifically, I must say, ethical responsibility in the digital age. His work articulates a compelling framework, one that places psychological safety, digital morality, integrity, and conscious leadership at the center of organizational resilience. We all need that. And in this respect, this webinar forms part of our broader commitment as Good Governance Academy, advancing governance research and enriching professional practice. By engaging with these topics, we strengthen our collective understanding of how leaders can effectively navigate uncertainty and while upholding transparency, accountability, and specifically ethical stewardship. Dear colleagues, dear audience, everybody all over the world, you are all welcome. And I extend my sincere appreciation to all participants for joining us today. And I trust that the insights shared will contribute meaningfully to ongoing academic disclosure and foster new avenues for our collaboration and future research topics we will define today. And thank you, and I wish you a productive and intellectually stimulating session by joining to our webinar. And please get ready to listen very good, advices, experiences, and knowledge from Douglas. And we start our session. Before that, I would like to have a quick look for the countries from South Africa. Thank you very much, South Africa. Many people from colleagues from Cape Town, London, France, Cape Town, Pretoria. And thank you for joining us, everybody, today. And either in the morning or in the afternoon. And thank you very much for being with us. And coming the very first question, Douglas, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Yes. Then, Doug, can you tell me about your leadership journey and how you came to, writing 3 books is quite something. Please let us your story about that. Thank you.
Well, I've been very blessed. I've had a lot of opportunities in life, and I don't believe in luck. I truly believe in fortune because fortune is a product of working hard. I was raised, I'm 59 years of age. I was raised in a very blue collar family. When as I got a little bit older, I started to realize that I had some athletic abilities, and by the time I was ready to graduate high school, I was being recruited for American style football, wrestling, Olympic wrestling, as well as track and field. And it was really neat because that was my first exposure at different types of leadership. I had some phenomenal coaches. They taught me how to develop myself, how to find things about myself that I didn't know. But they also taught me about my own personal leadership. And that's something I think is very, very important nowadays. IQ only gets us so far in the world, and being a subject matter expert only gets us so far. But where we really need to develop is with respect to our EQ, or our emotional quotient. After that, I went to university. I had a really good time, played some good sports, had an injury. Next thing you know, I had applied to the local police department. I served there for 27 and a half years. But, for me, I just don't, and I think people will kind of gather it with my energy here. I am this energetic all the time. I don't take medications. I'm like an Energizer bunny. So just, strap your seatbelts on because here we go. While I was policing, I was raising two daughters, but I also wanted more. I realized that I was really missing something. So I started coaching with a hockey club called the Guelph Hockey Club. And they basically are the pool, the talent pool where the NHL drafts from. So I've trained over 100 NHL hockey players on personal leadership. I've trained teams. We've won amazing championships with our international audience. I've had dinner with Wayne Gretzky, with Bobby Orr, some of the great Canadian icons. So I was really fortunate to be around the best of the best. After that happened, I realized that my career was getting a little bit near the end. So I went back to Cornell University and I got two certificates from them, one in executive leadership and another one in high performance leadership, because I realized that we all have an expiry date. And I knew mine in policing was coming to an end. So I wanted to make sure that when I made that next step, I had the academic backing behind me because, experience sometimes in some worlds, well, means nothing. They want letters or certificates behind your name. I was able to apply at the Ontario Police College. I beat 140 people for the job, which was great. So I was responsible for the sergeant course for the province, as well as the 911 civilian supervisor's course for middle management. And it was really neat being part of the inside and teaching from the inside because I really got the opportunity to dissect a lot of the facts and issues of leadership that was good, where I would say to our audience, if you see good leadership, take it, tweak it, make it your own, but make it better once you personalize it. But for those of you who've experienced bad leadership, we've always got to do the opposite of that because we know how that made us feel. While I was at the police college, I had the privilege of teaching over 10,000 new recruits on community policing and how we needed to get out and engage our communities. And I met a Crown attorney at the time, Richard, and he's like, dude, you've got some great stories here. You got to write it down. And I'm like, Richard, no one wants to hear my stories. But, I started writing it down. Next thing you know, Dan from CRC Press, they heard a podcast that I was involved with. The first book, Finding Your Granite, came out, and it was a book of discovery. Unfortunately, in some people's lives, we suffer from, like I have PTSD, I have a service dog. Some people may be bipolar. Some people may have things that were not perfect as individuals, but it's how we navigate and we manage those things. And the neat thing with that is I realized that we need to look at ourselves in three ways. Who we were no longer exists, but who we were created who we are today. And who we are today is going to be who we were tomorrow because we're always trying to move forward. And that was with my second book coming out, Moving Forward. The first book was a personal journey on finding my granite so that I could be the man that I always wanted to be, so I could be the leader that I always wanted to be. So that was very foundational. The next one came forward that I realized that in teaching a lot of the young people, we had this disconnect from the 1980s leaders such as myself and the younger people that we just didn't know how to talk with each other. And you'll hear my generation going, those young people, we can't work with them because they're this. And then you get the younger generation going, I can't work with these people. So moving forward, there were 12 emerging trends where we learned how to talk with each other. We learned how to talk with and work with each other. Because as I look back and I dissected my generation, they would say the young peoples or the millennials, they want things yesterday. They want promotions quick. They want this, they want this, they want this. And then you take a reflective step back. We wanted the same things. It was just 30 years ago. So based on that, the next book, the Unicorn Leadership, I was asked in a lecture session one time, and someone tried to kind of call me out, and they said, I used to work for you. And I said, yeah. And they said, but the leadership that you're talking about right now, you didn't do all of it. So you're a hypocrite, Sergeant Flug. I said, no, thank you for bringing that up. We should never be the same leader we were 7 years ago. Leadership is not a static, once you're leader, boom, you're done. It's like water. And I've recently read the book on Bruce Lee, be the water. And that's why I say to leaders right now, who we were is great, but we've got to evolve. We have to look at the who, the what, the where, the when, the why every day that we move forward so that we can stay at the forefront. And with that, Jim Collins talks about a level 5 leader. That's supposed to be the best leader according to him. I agree with that, but there's got to be something more. I am not going to let a literary ceiling hold me back from reaching my true potential. And that's what I say to people. So I thought, what is higher than level 5 leadership? And people always say, oh my God, a unicorn. A unicorn is such a rare beast. And, people want to be the unicorn. So instead of, and it's fictitious, I get that. But instead of having a level 5 academic leader that you can only get to that point, what if you want more? And that's what this book was designed. It's to give you more. Yes, I hope through your leadership journey, whether you're new, whether you're emerging, whether you're current, whether you're near the end of your journey, there is always something more, something bigger and better that we need to look inside ourselves and say, what am I doing right? Great, let's do that. Let's improve that. What am I not doing great? Maybe even ask the people that you work with so that you constantly evolve, so that you reach a higher level of consciousness and you become that leader you wish you always had. So that's how the books came out. And just a bit of what do they call it?
I will remember that water.
Yes,
And if you think about, generations and everything, we are entering a new era. Everybody is
yes,
talking about digital transformation, technology, artificial intelligence, and everything. These are mostly good things, but
yes.
we have also cybersecurity issues and, many other risks. Doug, what does real leadership under such a pressure look like in today's cybersecurity world? What can you say and advise for this? Thank you.
And that's a great question because for me, leadership isn't pressure that people can hear. Leadership is internal because, again, at the end of the day, we want to look inside. We need to find our granite and become controlled. And that's one thing that I find leadership's not sporadic. You're not firing all over the place because when you go into a chaotic situation, whether it's real or digital, if you go into that chaos and you become you are chaotic, you're not there helping anything. You need to provide calm in chaos. And when, it's the moment when everyone else is reacting and you're the one resetting the temperature of the room. Leaders are supposed to pull back and calm people down. And I've been in a lot of situations through my spheres of influence where the leader gets in there and they become bigger than the problem because they don't know how to monitor themselves. When I look at policing, chaos kind of clarified me. I like going into chaos because that was a comfort zone for me because I could function in there. In cyber, I would say chaos is going to expose leaders. It's either going to expose you as a good leader or a bad leader. Do you as a leader practice emergency management before the emergency happens? Do you sit there and say, okay, to your team, all of a sudden, boom, we have a chaos, we have a crisis. This is what are we going to do? And we call it desktoping. Are you desktoping chaos to give your people the tools they need so that when chaos occurs, they've got the repetitions through the drills to move forward? And for me, real leadership under pressure means integrity and calm aligning with the exact moment the organization needs it. So we are the instruments of calm. And as you grow and you develop and you get more experiential leadership, you get more calm because you've got a sphere of influence or a blueprint to template on any chaos, regardless of what it is. Cesar, your mic came off. There we go.
Yeah, sorry about that. When you talk about the decision fatigue, what's the practical way a CISO can stay sharp under stress? What do you think about this?
It's kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger used to talk about bodybuilding. When you go out there and you lift a weight, what happens is your muscles are under stress. And under stress, they tear. And once they tear, then they repair and you put all the good things, your food, your nutrition, your hydration, and it makes your muscles stronger. So our attention is just like a muscle. We need to train those. And again, it comes back to the practical applications in a lab setting so that you can apply those in the future. So when fatigue hits, your brain is going to narrow, and it's called auditory exclusion. And we learned that a lot in policing, that when you're in chaos and you're facing another person with a gun, your body naturally, your whole psyche tightens up. And your goal as a police officer, we train people and we put them in those crisis situations so that you don't get tunnel vision and look this way and you miss everything around. You keep your spectrum open so that you're able to do that. So when fatigue hits and your brain narrows, you don't miss the obvious risks. Sadly, in the world, you're seeing people that are now who've been convicted of murder being released because there wasn't the evidence. Where you're seeing investigators, whether it's cyber, whether it's policing, they have a theory and they prove that theory with the evidence that they have available, but they miss all the other stuff on the outside that says that that wasn't the person. So we've got to make sure we don't tighten our vision. And again, what we can do now is a simple 60-second reset that I would suggest for people. When you're in crisis, sit down, try to get an isolated spot, slow your breathing, posture, reset, throw the shoulders back, wiggle your toes, or, do some internal checks. Am I okay? Can I do this right now? We want to reboot our system like we would reboot a computer that's seized up. Once we do that, we have to realize that command isn't instant. It's recovered. Elite leaders don't avoid stress, they prepare for it. So again, when you desktop things, say you're coming into work, when do you become the worker versus the person? And as a police officer, as an athlete, it's that whole mental preparation. I every day would go into work if it was in policing, and I would run through if I'm called to a crisis situation. What am I going to do? What am I going to say? What am I going to do and react? I've seen NHL hockey players before a game, they'll be sitting in the stands and you'll see them with their earbuds on and their heads going back and forth and they're moving. What are they doing? They're playing the game before they even get into the game because they're running their minds through scenarios so that when that scenario hits, boom, they can rise up and excel. And that's how I got my website, Rise Up and Excel, that I hope people never have to operate in emergent situations, but isn't it cool that you practice so that when that emergency hits, you're the calm in chaos?
So, in such a case, why is psychological safety so important for preventing breach?
Simply it's because no one runs out, or excuse me, no tool outruns silence. And most breaches start with human fear, and fear speaks up, fear of being wrong, fear of being looked at weak. No one wants to say that they've made a mistake, so they shut down. If we can create an environment where leaders know that it's okay to make a mistake, but own it as quick as you can, it gives us an opportunity to fix it. I always tell everyone, lead with your best self, model the behavior seek of others, always create an environment where other people can succeed, because once you get promoted, it's no longer about me, it becomes about we, and it becomes about you bringing everyone up that works for you to the same level that you are. But we also have to look at it too. We have to take care of ourselves before we take care of others. And all too often, people go into leadership roles and they suffer physically, mentally, and spiritually. We have to realize that we're human beings, we're not robots. So that if you can go in there with that trifecta of I'm physically sound, I'm mentally sound, and I'm spiritually sound, those are precursors for you to be very successful so that you don't fall victim to some of these things.
Here, I'm thinking about what can be the biggest mistake leaders make when trying to stay calm during a crisis. What can
And I've
be
seen this in a lot of different forms, but basically, they some of these leaders, they fake calm instead of building it. Teams can smell false composure. When you walk into a situation, people can sense if you're a good leader by the way that within 5 seconds. And I look at in law enforcement, we are going into situations where in a millisecond we have to determine what are the what that person's going to do. Do we transfer that skill into cybersecurity? Athletes will go in there and they're going to watch someone and see where are they weak. I'm going to exploit that weakness because they wanted to win. But that's what we have to do. So again, at the end of the day, the real mistake is thinking calm is a performance when it's actually a practice. You have to practice to learn how to be calm. So we want to build, and it's built long before the crisis arrives. It's that muscle memory that we talk about. I've watched TV shows on the Navy SEALs, which are supposed to be the best elite operative group in the world. When they get down, they actually sit there and they say, this is the problem that we have. And this kind of mirrors what Nelson Mandela said his father told him. They go into a situation, they present the problem. Then they go around the table and they ask everyone's opinion all the way around the table so that everyone has a piece of the solution. Then they say, is this what works? And then they go with that. A leader isn't the person who is the first to talk in the room. A leader is the one who basically shuts up the first in the room after they present the problem. We create these beautiful teams of subject matter experts, but then we never allowed them to lead. So this is where we can empower through practice and through tabletopping. with our people so they can develop, so that one day when we leave, we know that we hand the torch to a very capable group of leaders. And it's so important. But when we go into these situations, we have to have, and again, I know I'm very animated right now, but in an emergent situation, I get very quiet, I get very focused, I concentrate on my breathing, I concentrate on my tone. And again, my internal dialogue is mirrored by what they see. If I'm sitting there telling people that I'm confident yet I'm shaking, that doesn't instill confidence in people. So again, regardless of the sphere that we're influencing in or we're working in, it starts with that internal mechanism and that internal leadership that comes out of our body that fills the room for success.
So, you mentioned digital morality, and what does that mean in plain language? And why should CISO care about morality?
There's so much discussion right now in the world about AI. A lot of people are scared, and quite frankly, the piece of AI I'm getting sick of is all the fake news. Because I'm finding now that if I see something on TV, I have to go and figure out if it's real. But for me, digital morality means making sure that the systems we build, especially AI, protect human values, not just the data. CISOs are no longer just defenders, but you're the architects of trust in your organization. So we really want to focus on building trust. And as we hand more decisions to machines, someone has to ensure that those decisions reflect the ethical, the fairness, the accountability. Someone has to be the CEO of the AI because it's a tool. And the one thing I like to do with when I'm creating an article or I'm writing, I will write it myself. Then I will put into AI and I'll say, where are my weaknesses in this article? Tell me what those weaknesses are and how can I fix them? So that's where the Iron Will 360 came. It's a scan of the situation. So if you put a problem in something, and this is something I learned from being cross-examined by a defense counsel. When I would arrest someone and we would go to court, we would present the evidence that we had. And as the defense took over, they would find errors in our documentation and they would start to ask us questions on those errors to exploit weakness so that maybe the case that we thought was solid didn't exist. That's what we need to do in the roles that we're talking about is look for areas where it can be attacked. Let's be proactive, find those areas of weakness, make them strengths so that we minimize those areas. And especially with AI, AI can be a phenomenal tool to do that, but we have to realize that we program the machines, not the other way around. So AI is a tool. It shouldn't become an existence. And I think that's what we're going to see as we move forward, going down the road. AI, as long as we make sure that we monitor it, we just don't accept it. It's what, would you go into a personal trainer or a heart doctor and say, this is my problem, what do you think? And just say, okay, I'm going to do exactly what they want to do. You're going to have some questions. And we have to question AI like we would if we get a cancer diagnosis from our doctor, like we're told that we need to lose 10 pounds or whatever. It's a tool, and we got to make sure that we keep it a tool so that it doesn't rule us, we rule it.
So, Douglas, what does it mean for a chief audit executive to lead beyond compliance?
I
It's
think for me,
something
oops, sorry.
It's something I really want to know. And, nowadays we are talking about leadership, and chief audit executives are quite unique in their nature. They are lonely in the organizations most of the time. And so, how can they lead beyond compliance? What is your opinion about this? Thank you.
No, this is something that I see a lot of people make an error. Once they get into a leadership situation, they get the spot, but they're not that confident. So leading for them, it's we need to do it beyond compliance, and it means we have to stop treating the audit function like a rule book and start treating it like a responsibility. This isn't just checklist, 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 checklist. We have to be responsible for the decisions we make and for the audits that we do. So we need to look at compliance checks in the box, and leadership changes the culture. A level 5 leader doesn't just confirm controls, they elevate integrity. They use their position to shape behavior, not just document it. We can go in there and you always hear status quo. We're not going to change it. Well, no one wants to work for someone who goes status quo because nothing was perfect and nothing is perfect. So as a good leader, we need to go in there after, and what I would suggest is after 2 to 3 months of learning the systems, learning why, as Simon Sinek talks about, why are we doing this? Then we know how and what to do to move forward. As we do that internal why on our compliance checks, ask yourself, why are we currently doing it this way? Is there a better way? Talk to your staff. As a leader, I need to enlist the advice from the subject matter people that are actually doing the job. Too often leaders say, well, I'm the leader now, I know what goes. But if you lose and you have that disconnect with the people that you supervise, you are losing such a phenomenal resource pool. So again, tabletop stuff. This is how we do anything. Is there anyone in the room that thinks we could do it better? Yes. Don't be offended by that. Well, tell me why. How can we incorporate that? Will it make your job easier? And leadership is not about me, it's about we, that eventually becomes about us. And I think far too many leaders, when they first get the job, they think, I've made it now, and they start to look for their next promotion, where they have to realize that they have to earn the promotion that they're at.
And in that respect, you say the chief audit executives is the organization's co-science. And what does that look like for day-to-day, operations? And what can we say about this?
This is one of the hardest things because it's people dealing with people. What I mean by this is it means that you tell the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Those adult conversations. If someone's not up to performance, we need to say, I'm sorry, you're not up to performance. We don't address attitude, we address behavior because behavior is always tied to a standard. And all too often, new leaders are so scared to hurt people's feelings that they actually hurt their own career and they hurt the organization. So again, we have to have those adult conversations. It means you shine light on patterns that others don't want to see. And further to that, it means you refuse to be politically convenient. A good leader, as a conscious, stays neutral, they stay steady, and they stay principled. As a leader, you are a funnel up and a funnel down. Your job is to bring senior leadership messages, make it palatable or make it usable, and bring it down to your subordinates. Then that has to be two ways. You have to take what they say, you bring it up, and you reformat it like the leader, like the supervisors talk, and you're the conduit of information up and down. Far too often we see senior leadership teams push information down, but they don't want to hear it back. And that's how organizations thrive, where you've got that 360 leadership going up and down, where people will give their opinions and they feel valued. But when people's opinions are acted upon, it breeds lower accountability. If I told you to do something, you go, well, I really don't want to do that, Doug. But I said, Cesar, this is the problem I have. What do you think? You provide me a solution. Then I say, that's a good idea. Let's do it. Who's going to be the biggest seller of that new idea? Not me. It's you because you're part of it. And that's what leadership is. It's about guiding people so that so they can realize their potential. And in the process, we're going to reach our potential.
Yeah, making part of it is really important. I agree with you. And why do so many leaders hide behind checklists? What is the real risk in doing so?
And it's a huge failure because it's easy, it's safe. You know, I could do anything to a checklist. Check, check, check. You've done your job. But is that enough? When we look at our customers or those people we work for, I think they pay us big money because they want more than just a checklist. Checklists, much like leadership, should be fluid because every fact and issue, the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, sometimes the how, that's always going to change when we look at things. If we have the same checklist as 20 years ago, and we faced an audit or we were sued or we went to the legal case, they would say, yeah, you did all the checkbooks, but were there situations you could have looked at? Well, yeah, I should have done A, B, C. Well, why didn't you do that? Well, it wasn't on the checklist. Who wants to appear before a governing body that says, yeah, I could have done more, but I didn't? And with these types of people, they give the illusion of control, but when leaders hide behind the checklist, they miss the human reality underneath. The risk is simple. You can have perfect paperwork and a failed culture in an organization where people say that all he does is or she does is meet the list. So again, a checklist can confirm compliance, but it can also detect fear, burnout, dishonesty, and moral drift in leaders. We need leaders to show up and make the job better, not just be status quo.
So, coming to your prestigious book. What is the level 5 assurance in simple terms, and how does it change the chief audit executive's role? What can you say about this?
Well, that's a good one. For me, level five assurance means that these leaders, they stop being technical gatekeepers and they become the builders of trust. It's assurance with conscience. And that's so important. Integrity is what we do when no one watches. Accountability is who we're accountable to all the time. You know, Honor and passion mix in that, and those are my four core values. But again, it blends courage, empathy, ethics, and a strategic vision into one unified posture. It turns the leader into a cultural architect. And that's the thing that I really like with my next book. It's about leadership as a cultural architect. We're taking things that exist, but we're finding out why we need to make them better, and we're making them better. How many times do you see a beautiful structure that they build an addition to it? Because what's working worked, but we want to make it bigger and better. And if you look at a sports team, they don't want to win just a championship one season. They want to have it be an architect of many, many seasons. And that's where the fun lies. And when we look at our organizations, do we look at our own personal 1, 3, 5, 7 year goals? But do we look at it as our unit, 1, 3, 5, 7 year goals? But even our organizational 1, 3, 5, and 7 year goals. If we don't have something to work forward to, we become stagnant and we just go back to those checklists. So a leader in this situation, again, as I say, they blend courage, they blend empathy, they blend ethics and strategic vision, and they become an architect of something grand. And when you build it, much like Kevin Costner used to say from Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. And some organizations say we lose the good people all the time. What do you do to keep those good people? But I guarantee if you build this great architect, you're going to have more good people than you can have jobs for because people want to jump on the side of a winning team.
So thank you very much. And I would like to ask, how can a chief audit executive shift from a compliance mindset to a culture building mindset? This is quite critical. And in such a competitive, business environment, either in public sector, private sector, or anywhere in the world is a critical, issue. And I would like to um, learn on behalf of our audience. Thank you very much.
It comes down to the old argument, IQ versus EQ. When we look at it, we need to start by asking different questions. Instead of do we follow the rule, we need to say what behavior created this pattern. We need to learn how we created it, not, that it's there. And again, it comes down to learning the why. If I know why we created something, I'm going to know how and what to do to make it better. So instead of saying, where's the mistake, we need to ask, where's our vulnerability? And that's where we can use AI. Put in a situation, say a policy in an organization. Here's the new policy on DEI. AI, do you see any flaws in this? And then with that, you have to know how to ask the questions of like Chat GPT or something. If you're a human resource lawyer and you're attacking or representing someone that has been wronged by our organization, where do you find our vulnerabilities with this policy? It's going to spit out everything. And again, that's great that AI does it, but now we have to take that and we have to incorporate and rewrite the new policy. So again, instead of going, where's the mistake? Why don't we say, where's the vulnerability? We need to be very proactive in what we're doing. That's going to build a culture that's going to begin with curiosity in your organization, transparency, and integrity. We used to give a corporate award for ingenuity in the workplace. And, if we can look at our workplaces, we have all these subject matter experts that they'll always tell you they know better. And they'll complain to supervisors won't do it. But if it comes down CEO led to every level saying, do you find or where are our vulnerabilities in this organization? Do we have any deficiencies that we could fix? And then you tie that into a week's holidays or a bonus. People are going to come there because one, they feel they can talk with you. It shows transparency. It shows that as a leader, you know that, and you show people you don't know everything, and you let the subject matter experts give their informed opinion. We hire them to be subject matter experts, but once they're in the door, we shut their opinions down, and we can't do that. We want to build that culture. And when these types of leaders and they develop these types of values instead of fear, the whole organization is going to breathe better. I worked for bosses that I was scared to make a mistake and I just checked boxes. But I work for bosses that said, "Hey, you make a mistake as long as you're honest and you tell me why, we're going to develop." And those were the leaders that I excelled in. You look at sport, people make mistake all the time. But in a sporting game, if someone misses a pass or they do something wrong, the coach doesn't just immediately take them and throw them on the bench. It's like, come on, you can do better, you can do better. They give them an opportunity to improve the mistake because as subject matter experts, we're all professionals. We all know when we make errors, but we want to be able to fix them and move forward. And if someone makes a mistake and they move forward, it's done. Don't keep talking about it because you're picking like a scab off of a wound. We need to create a culture where people will truly thrive, and that's what I said. Always create an environment where other people can succeed. And when you look at as a supervisor, you no longer think about me, you think about we, but you figure out how you can help we improve it for us. Oh, your volume.
In such a new business environment, we have artificial intelligence tools and robotics and autonomous systems. They are so intelligent, but still they may make some mistakes. We call them as algorithmic bias or unethical, decision making risks involved in these issues. So, what can be the solution for, being as a responsible leadership to this
AI, I
business
love it.
environment?
AI, I love it, and it's a great tool to maybe speed up some of the boring pieces of work. But ultimately, if say I was going to write a paper, I'd say reference this. I just don't leave it that way. I'm going to go and actually physically check those sources because AI sometimes auto populations like our stupid cell phones do, it makes something up because it's an algorithm. It wants to please you so you get the thumb up or the thumb down. It's like anything, it's a tool. When we are teaching our children how to cook, do we just say, here's a stove, here's whatever, and we just walk away? No, we monitor it. We give them,
Yes.
we give them praise. And AI is almost like a small child. It's going to do whatever it can to make us happy, but it's going to make mistakes. And if we take, if you get your 5-year-old child to write an essay, are you going to take that, hand it into school? No, you're going to check it to make sure it was done right. And that's the thing. AI is created by humans. Humans make mistakes. Therefore, AI is going to make mistakes. And it's funny. One time I put, "Who is Doug Flug" on ChatGPT. It told me that I went to a high school. No, that in a different city. So it's just going to get whatever it believes is there, your patterns, and those types of things. So it's like anything. It's a great tool to compress a lot of, say, mundane work, but we still have to have the human eye to go over it. It's no different than if one of your subordinates comes up and gives you a report, you're still going to read it over to make sure they've dotted their I's, crossed their T's, and dotted their J's, and they're using speak to go up to the bosses. We still have to do that. It's a tool. Much like a chainsaw, if we want to cut wood, we still have to sharpen it. We still have to make sure it's maintained, and we still have to make sure it's doing the right job. So AI is a great tool to condense work, but we still have to oversight it. And human oversight, AI can't do that. And AI doesn't have the EQ piece of it. AI understands the IQ, but they don't understand the human piece of that. AI could say, you need to fire this person, but you just don't walk in and say, hey, Cesar, you're fired. You're going to have to use the EQ piece to soften the blow.
Yeah, very true. And in addition to that, I'm expecting some sentences related to auditor's role in, controlling the process and audit leadership needed for artificial intelligence process to be, accountable, ethical, responsible. There are still things to do for auditors, I believe. What do you think?
I totally agree because at the end of the day, for my one this book that just came out, I said, and I was honest. It was a statement of integrity. That's what they call it in the writing. This book was reviewed by ChatGPT for spelling and grammar errors only because my spelling sometimes is bad or grammar. It's, some people are writing entire books and saying that was them. I was very honest and very open. This book was proofread and grammar checked by AI. I want people to know that, but then I still, I wouldn't let, and I said before, AI, when I said, where did I go to high school, said a different city. So are you going to just take it for what it's worth from what it draws from the internet? That's where we would say this book was audited by AI for grammar and spelling, but this book is my material, contains all my material. My academic integrity is that I reviewed, I wrote all of this. Nothing in this book appears that was not mine,
Yeah.
signed Douglas Flug. So it's going to come down to our individual integrity. And that's what we need to build as leaders, as we said earlier on in a webinar. If you can go out there and not talk the talk, but show the walk, because people don't want to hear how good you are. People want to see how
Yeah.
good you are. And when you go out there and you earn your trust, you earn your credibility wherever you are, that's going to bode well towards your integrity. So if someone reads a report and says, okay, this was proofread by AI and it was grammar checked, I got no problem with that. Oh, and Doug Fluke says that he wrote this personally himself, and I know Doug to be very one with high integrity. Boom, it's good. And that's what we have to do. It's that the hybrid of both.
So in addition to our, conversation, we have two good questions coming from the audience. Um, so the first one is Melinda. Thank you very much for your question. Uh, I have come across organizations which have the approach of manage your managers. Means the subordinate should initiate check-ins, highlight inefficiencies, and identify training need. Do you have advice for these manage your managers environments?
This is a real tough one because some managers will take it that you're backstabbing them, you're
Mhm.
circumventing them, but it's going to come down to the human connection. You know, I had a staff sergeant one time that I had earned so much credibility with him. So in my police department, you went from being an officer to a sergeant, and the next level was a staff sergeant. And a lot of times, because we had such a trust with each other, I was accountable to him. You know, if I made a mistake, he would create that environment. Sometimes you'd say, "Hey, Doug, I want to do this. What do you think?" And I would tell him, good or bad, from my experience. He trusted me, much like I'm telling people to trust other people. But also, because that trust was developed, one time he did something, and I came in private. And this is one thing people have to follow. You always praise in public in front of peers, but you always punish or correct in private. Because if you punish someone in front of people, that is terrible. You lose massive leadership capital with respect to that. So I pulled him aside and I said, "Hey, Woody, just so you know what you did, that didn't go over very well. This is what this is what I want you to consider next time." I didn't say you did something wrong. I just said, this didn't go well. This is what you might want to do next time. He called me in the next day and said, "You're right. Thanks for having my back." And we went forward. So to manage your manager, you can do that, but you've got to build the trust with them, and it has to be participatory. You know, it's the old thing that they're going to come down to you for corrections. They're going to come down to you and lift you up. But if you can create that hybrid, I think it's going to make your organization better because people are going to see that relationship too. Your volume. Oh, there you go.
So, the next question is, what if the leadership culture is prohibiting you from going beyond compliance and whatever great idea coming from you, the leaders choose to ignore and let you do your job as it is? How do we advise these leaders?
And that's really good as well. And it goes back to that old expression, to thine own self be true. You know, our leaders have bosses. And when you're in an organization, don't change. If you want to be exceptional, be exceptional. And if you're not getting recognized by your boss, well, it's sad and it sucks, to be honest. But when you create a hybrid version of yourself and you become a rock star or you are the best of the best, it's going to permeate through your entire organization. Your peers are going to see it, but it's going to get up to your leaders. So sometimes having that bad leader at the top, um, you're not trying to work around them, but just keep being you, because at the end of the day, they may be in that spot because there's no other place for them and someone else is going to, come in there. But stay the course and realize that it's, as Simon Sinek talks about, it's an infinite game. Doing well isn't this week. Doing well isn't this year. It's about, that 1, 3, 5, 7 year goals that you have and driving towards that level of excellence moving forward. So it's not an immediate thing. And I know the whole world wants everything yesterday, but it takes time. It takes time to build trust. It takes time to build credibility. It takes time to build relationships. But be the exceptional you and continue to be that. If there's courses you need, have a sit down with your boss and say, I would like to be here in 4 years. Could you possibly get me these courses? And hopefully they're going to say why. And at the end of the day, and this is when you want to influence up, frame it what's in it for them. So if I wanted something and my boss was kind of putting a ceiling, I would say, and I had this in one of my jobs, I wanted to get an HR certificate because I was teaching HR. And at the Ontario Police College, I went in there and I said, I'm teaching stuff that I don't have the academic credibility for. And I see that's massive risk for me. It's massive risk for our organization, and it's massive risk for you. They had to do it at that point. So if you're not getting some courses and you can apply risk management to it and you can expose weaknesses to you, to your boss and the organization, it's almost like situational blackmail, but they have to do it.
Yeah. So I think we have no more questions, and coming to the end and the closing, if you would like to say your final words, and then we can start closing.
There are some more questions in the
Oh,
chat, Cesar, if you wish to maybe give those a
Yes.
little bit of a quick read.
Let me have a look. How do you, Douglas, create or foster a culture of honesty and creativity without checkboxing, knowing that in particular the unexperienced subordinates feel more at ease with checkboxes? And the other one, in connection to your book, at level 5 assurance, what should the leadership between internal audit and the audit community look like? What new expectations should the audit committee place on the audit function? And what leadership behavior differentiate level 5 audit leaders from the traditional chief audit executives? Thank you.
whoa. The second question, I think the biggest thing is transparency. And again, going back to our core values, I find too many leaders, if you were to say, what are your 4 core values? What do you mean? Well, what do you hold most dear? When you're gone, because we're all going to be gone one day, how do you want to be remembered? And for me, mine are honor, because I try to do the right thing. Integrity, I do the right thing when no one's watching, because it's easier to do the right thing when you're in front of an audience. Accountability, I'm accountable to everyone in this audience today. I'm accountable to wherever. And again, passion is what you get. So when you get organizations that there's not a lot of honesty there, model the behavior you seek of others. It's simple, but if you're honest, and sadly, with honesty, sometimes you're going to take the hit. But as long as you can take the hit and realize that, and internalize, don't take the hit as well. My goodness, I was honest, therefore I got criticized. Is the criticism valid? Can you learn from it? Can you move forward? And I think too often we take things personal, and we need to realize that we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to get called on them. But what can I take from this and move forward? In my first book, I talk about being in a near suicidal situation where I wanted to take my life with my service revolver because of a very bad call for service that I had. I would challenge that that's probably the deepest anyone can ever get, the darkest anyone can get. But I got to a point when I hit bottom before I found my granite that I said, what am I learning from this? And I look now and I look at the strength that I achieved. And sometimes the best strength in our lives comes on the flip side of some of the worst failures that we had done. Because when we fail or we're not successful, we start to learn what we needed to do that we didn't do. So when we look at an organization with honesty, always try to approach honesty in how you practice and how you speak. Because a lot of times people will preach honesty, but then they won't show that. So make sure the messages you're voicing or you're writing are the same things that you're doing. I hope that answered the second question. I forget the first one.
Yeah, so the first one is related to the ease of checkboxes. And the other question in connection to that, what talent strategies help build a future-ready audit function that is both technically strong and strategically influential?
I think we got to go back to some of our core values and make sure that we become part of that. I know that once upon a time when we were looking at our mission, vision, values, it came out in our organization. No one told them what they were. No one told them how do they apply. When you look at our job function, mission, vision, values is every part of that. When you look at performance, when you look at the checklist of when we do quality control, we need to make sure that the ground or the granite that we have is solid enough so we can start to build on top of. So when we find some of these deficiencies in organizations, if you can strategize and put yourself in the developmental committees, like we'll always get, senior leadership team will say, we want someone to join us for the formation of our business plan. Oh, I'm not getting involved with that. Well, then do you really have a right to be critical of the organization? Seek out these opportunities from stuff outside what your sphere of influence is, where you can start to help create and be an architect, as we've said, of a better organization. I think then and only then you're going to find some solutions. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Another last minute question. Thank you very much for Tondani. Coming to work on time is being ethical, but should managers focus on time arrival and departure productivity? And what is your opinion?
This bit me. When COVID happened, we were all sent to work at home. Every day when I got home, if you did a keystroke check on me, because it comes down to personal integrity and personal honesty. If you checked my keystrokes, I would tell you that I got paid for 7 hours a day, but I was at my computer for 8 hours a day. When they said you got to start to come back, we had, because COVID was so long, we actually moved to a different location. They wanted, well, you got to be in your seat. You got to be in your seat. And truthfully, for me, being in my seat in the office meant I wasted half the day because everyone wanted to talk. So I would say you need to get a hybrid situation of earn the trust and show your managers through the business case that, look, this is what I did at home. Honestly, here I'm not as productive. So I am old school. Again, I was raised in a policing environment where when it's 6 o'clock in the morning, you show up at 5:30. But again, I did that. We showed the productivity through the day. But because we earned the trust of our bosses, they would let us leave a little bit early. So, when we're talking about ethical managers focus on time versus departure and productivity, I think it's up to us to sell the productivity and ask them if there's a way we could work around that. And you got to use the buzzwords. I am doing 110% of my daily work, but is it possible for a work-life balance? I could come in a little bit later, or I could leave a little bit earlier, but that's where you have to frame it through work-life balance, through mental health, or what have you, because those are real tangible things that managers need to be aware of, but they need to adapt to as we move forward.
So, thank you very much for all the good questions and everything. We are approaching to the end of our session. And Douglas, we would like to see you in the new year. And distinguished participants and dear colleagues, as we conclude today's webinar, I would like to express my deepest appreciation to our guest speaker, Douglas, for his insightful contributions and to all attendees for their active engagement throughout the session. And today's discussion has underscored the continued importance of principled leadership in an era defined by artificial intelligence and escalating organizational complexities and the leadership under pressure, decision fatigue, psychological safety, ethical decision making, and more, especially digital morality, highlight the expanding responsibilities placed upon modern executives, and specifically for chief information security officers and chief audit executives. Here, I hope that today's webinar has not only enriched your understanding, but also encouraged deeper reflection on the evolving nature of leadership and governance in the digital era. It is our aspiration that these conversations will continue within your institutions, classrooms, professional networks, and contributing to the ongoing development of ethical, resilient, and forward-looking leadership models with new books expected from Douglas. And thank you once again for your participation and your dedication to advancing academic and professional excellence. And we look forward to welcoming you to our future events and wishing you all the continued success and all the best wishes. Thank you very much. Thank you,
And
Douglas.
thank you. And just as we conclude, I just want to remind people that leadership is one of many hats that we wear. We need to focus on the person and make sure that we look at that internal reflection, because if we become better internal leaders, it's going to help every role we have as a parent, a spouse, a boss, whatever. So again, focus on the me, make the me better, and it'll affect the we in a much more positive space. But thank you very much.